To the appointments of citizen volunteers to boards and commissions. I move to go ahead and appoint the appointees to boards and commissions as are listed in the recommended board and commission text of our packet.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, sir. If I could.
Councilman Wilson.
On the attachment summary and the list of all the boards and commission members that we just recently made a motion to appoint, the one-year vacancy position for the Planning Commission does not have a name assigned to it. And I'd like to go ahead and amend your motion to include the approval of the boards and commissions list with the addition of Randy Reed and that one-year term for Planning Commission.
Okay. I'm not going to accept the amendment at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and have my motion as stated, and we can have a separate motion on that if you like.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1 with Councilman Wilson opposed.
And I'll explain a little bit if I could for the opposition vote is I think it should have been done in one swift. So in that case, I'll make a motion to appoint the one-year vacancy position for the Planning Commission to Randy Reed.
I'll second.
Thanks.
You have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Councilmember Green.
I noticed we do have another, one other board with a vacancy. So how, when we do have a vacancy, what's our process? Just go back to the drawing board, continue interviews?
We are currently advertising again on our website that there are still a couple vacancies. We are also having that group go back through the applicants that were received that did not get appointed to other boards and commissions and determine if there's anyone interested left from that pool that would be interested in being appointing, and we would be bringing that one back to you as soon as we do have a recommendation for that one. We just don't have it at this point in time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just one comment. You did check with Randy, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I see him sitting out there. So.
Actually, no, I checked with Hattie.
I just say Hattie said yes. Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilman Teal?
Yeah, actually, I've had a brief discussion with Randy on this one, too. He is very interested. I mean, I know we did have an objection made by Brett Ford to his his appointment. Brett wasn't very verbose in terms of giving us a reason. I think Randy will be a fine. You know, he's a past mayor of the town. He's sat on boards and commissions in the past. The reality is, I think we could use some new people on the Planning Commission. I personally, it is my view that, well, Mr. Mayor and Renee, you guys are under recall because the Planning Commission's been failing us. Planning Commission that we've had in the past has been giving us bad advice. I would hope, kind of an elder statesman of the town, hey, Randy, you need to take that down. I'm going to use that against you one of these days. I would hope he can lend the better advice that I think we all need moving forward. So I speak in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments? Councilman Valentine?
My only concern is that what we're supposed to do is we're all supposed to be impartial and not have our decisions predisposed. So that's my only concern. He may need to recuse himself from some votes coming up based on where he lives. So that's my only concern there. And Randy, we've talked about that, so I don't think that that's anything new on my part.
Well, but we all live here. I mean, we all live here.
We have, but he had sent me an email directly stating he already made his mind up on which way he would go. That's not what we're supposed to do.
No, that's us. That's quasi-judicial. Our citizens' boards are not bound by the same quasi-judicial as we are, guys.
Not quasi-judicial, but we should have the same impartiality.
No, we want citizens to have an opinion. We want citizens to come before us with opinions, don't we? Isn't that what this is all about? So,
You're not supposed to have an opinion until everything's been presented.
You're not supposed to have an opinion until everything's been presented. As a member of the Planning Commission, will he not be presented information to come to or change an opinion?
He's already represented to me that he has made a decision.
So that decision will color all other decisions that could come before the board. Again, Renee, hey, listen, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt here. I'm just not seeing the clean, logical line of your argument.
Okay. I think Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we are following, if our process, again, like I just asked, including for a design review board with a to be determined vacancy, I want to make sure we're following that for our other boards as well. And I'd like for us to see that if the processes go back to that board and commission, re-interview, go through applications again, I'd like for us to continue to follow that, and so that we have that precedent set for all our other boards and commissions as well.
Can we keep one topic of discussion on the floor at a time? Jen, we can totally come back and talk about that, but can we deal with the motion on the floor, the motion at hand?
Well, I think her question, not to put words in, are we following our own rules and guidelines? And that's what I was going to
That's exactly what I'm meaning, yes.
I think I can shed a little light on the TBD on the list that you have. So like on the design review board, that board is actually made up of members of the other boards and commissions. So when you see, like from the Historic Preservation Board, they've already got one member, but they're waiting on this list for the new members to get their other member selected, I believe. From Planning Commission, it'd be great to seat the Planning Commission, because we do have business coming up and we don't have sufficient members right now to conduct that business. It'd be nice to have the Planning Commission in place and then the Planning Commission pick their representative for the Design Review Board. So I think the TBDs, when you see them in there, and Sally, please correct me if that's incorrect,
Say if you could-
but I think that's what those TBDs are. And before you do that, on the Planning Commission, it wasn't really a TBD. There was a 3-member interview panel consisting of myself, a member of Planning Commission, and the Assistant Director of Development Services. And we actually made a selection for the 1-year term, and it was actually Randy. And just recently, there was one of the members of the interview board that just had some reservations and didn't want to support Randy. My understanding is that still 2 members of the interview panel selected and still support, 1 doesn't. So having TBD is kind of maybe a misinformation. It really wasn't to be determined. It was to be appointed by council. So I think that's a misrepresentation in there. So we actually did follow a process. We interviewed 16 people. And Renee, I kind of go along with what you say. People have opinions. They have, I can tell you personally, the better part of greater than 6 people that we interviewed for the Planning Commission vacancy actually stated openly their views on some of the current issues with growth that I think you'd be a little floored by, which is why their names aren't on this list. But I fully trust and support, having served with the individual that I'm recommending for this 1-year term, that the integrity he had sitting at this dais to conduct himself in a professional manner will not waver if he's up here as a member of the Planning Commission. And still strongly feel that I think it'd be nice maybe having the continued dialogue with developers that maybe had PDs that were approved back in 04, 05 when this individual was sitting at this dais to now come before Planning Commission to ask for their construction to begin or ask for a variance. Or it might not be a bad idea for a year while the other folks are learning to have somebody with that historical background to sit at the dais as well. So I don't believe we'll have an issue. I believe that any preconceived opinions will follow under the rules that they need to for quasi-judicial. And I'm going to just kind of give kudos out to the Assistant Director of Development Services. Ms. Vargas, when she conducted these interviews with us, she made painstakingly clear that members on the Planning Commission had to have statements of fact that if they wanted to deny something. It wasn't because you didn't like the name. It wasn't because you didn't like the color. It wasn't because you didn't want it in your neighborhood. It was you had to have statements of fact. And kind of dovetailing on what George said, yep, Councilmember Ford expressed some concern, but he was not exactly particularly verbose in his email, just nope, or words to that effect. Don't want that individual. That's not a statement of fact. And I'm not ready to castigate somebody who served us so well in the previous decade. I think he would be a true benefit to sit on this board, on this commission, and he's got my full support. Thanks.
Thank you. So just a couple of things from my perspective on this. George, just to correct a statement that you made earlier, the reason I am under recall is not because Planning Commission failed us. So I just want to make that clear. Planning Commission has actually done a really good job. And I think it's been a good group of people that have had diverse opinions about the projects that have been coming to town. And I think most of our boards and commissions have done a really good job. One of the reasons that they've done a good job is because they've been open-minded about the projects that have been coming in, whether it's utilities, whether it's public safety, whether it's the Planning Commission or Public Works. We have been looking for residents who will maintain an open mind about the projects that are coming, and that they'll give us, their feedback on those projects. I served with Randy Reed as well. I think Randy did a great job, as mayor. I think he's a great person. My concern is that Randy has made some historical statements in regards to some of the annexations that might be coming in, that he has already made up his mind in terms of these projects. And I don't think it makes any sense to have a person who has already made up their mind about projects that they may be seeing to put them on that commission. I think that there were a good number of candidates that were in that pool. I think that and I don't think it was the chair who had of the Planning Commission who had concerns. I think that we need to. It wasn't the chair. What was Max's position? Member of the Planning Commission. So there were concerns there. So I think that it just requires a little bit more conversation. I think that it's important to understand that the boards and commission members serve at the pleasure of council. And council needs to be comfortable with the individuals that are there. George and Chip, I know you guys are comfortable with Randy being there, and I'm not sure where anyone else stands on it. But I'm not comfortable with someone coming in who already has a preconceived idea of which direction they want to go. I don't think they're going to be giving the developers a fair shot. I think everybody deserves a fair shot when they come to our community looking to develop in terms of our economic development. And I would have some concerns with Randy being on the Planning Commission. So I completely understand what you're saying. I've heard you talk it out. Those are my concerns. And I think that we need to have a little bit more discussion on that. So,
Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, by all means, obviously I'm the junior member here. I sit in on Public Safety Commission. And one of our questions on the Public Safety Commission is, what direction do you think public safety should go in Castle Rock in the future? So, I mean, I apologize. I thought that was a standard throughout our boards and commissions. I didn't realize it would be a disqualifier because it's something we ask about, and I wouldn't want to speak for the chiefs on this matter, but it's something that we value on the Public Safety Commission.
thank you, Councilman. Any other discussion?
Can Sally answer the question? Are we following the rules and regulations? Okay.
I think she explained earlier what our standard process is.
One more time, so I must have missed it.
Right. Staff is a non-voting member on the interview team. The interview team is the ones that do the interviews, as has been said. Design Review Board, as Councilmember Wilson stated, is a little bit different because it is made up of appointments from other commissions as opposed to citizens at large. But when you have citizen at large vacancies, our practice has been, as I described previously, to go through those applicants that were not selected by first choice by any of the interview teams, and then see if they might fit or have interest in serving in another capacity. So Design Review Board, those vacancies are due to the fact that these other boards have not been fully appointed yet. However, the process, as I described previously, for the rest of the boards and commissions is accurate.
Thank you.
So really what we have is a 1-to-1 vote where Chip is in favor of having Mr. Reed on there and the Planning Commission member is not. Is that?
You do not have a unanimous recommendation from the interview
Right.
committee at this point in time.
Councilman Wilson?
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to use the comment that you made that the commissions serve at the pleasure of the town council. Town council members in favor of this individual, but that's a whole other Oprah. I'll leave that alone. The other thing is when you talk about having somebody make statements or predisposed to an idea or an agenda already, I hope if that's the direction that this council is going to take with this vote, just because of this individual may have stated something on social media or, already been, what, I'm kind of opposed to that, or, hey, what, that's wrong, or this is the wrong direction. First off, I think that's a huge breach of the First Amendment, but I'll get off of that soapbox really quickly. There's an individual that's already declared candidacy that's running in November. That's already got a lot of preconceived ideas and opinions and direction for this town. And I hope that he's not castigated or subjected to the same, you're predisposed to those decisions already. I'm thinking when you ran, one of the biggest issues was the gun issue, right? Open carry. Okay, good. So you didn't come into this with an agenda or an idea or any predisposition to a vote. And I say that jokingly, George, because I really can't keep a straight face when I said that. You came into it with an idea that you already had your mind made up.
And I disagree with you, good sir. I very much had a personal agenda when I agreed to be on this council.
So again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at this person's service to this community. We did a proclamation to Bob Lowenberg. My wife went to his funeral today. He was one of her teachers. I couldn't say enough nice things about him. We do a proclamation for the individual and recognize his service to this community. And yet, I'm going to take from 2004 to 2010, the individual served for 6 years, 4 of which as mayor, an incredible up in the economy and then a huge economic downturn. And we still ended every year in the black. I've got great confidence that this individual will provide a professional opinion or ruling from the bench during his 1 year on the Planning Commission for him to serve out where Jarman Smith stepped down. And again, I'll go back to the other individuals. As Sally mentioned, we would go back if there was a TBD and look at other individuals that were interviewed. We did 16 of them, one of which was outside the parameters of getting an application. But I was interested in sitting down and meeting with the individual at the behest of another member of council. And I'm so glad I did. It was a great opportunity to sit and meet this individual and his service to this community. But after that interview, the 3-member panel for the interview for the Planning Commission, evidently staff doesn't have a vote, so it's nice to have 3-member, which I think you could break a tie. But we all agreed. Had we had a council meeting on June the 7th, this decision would have been made then, and there was no email from the member of the Planning Commission to voice a concern. So here we did a Planning Commission interviews. May 10th was the interviews. So almost a month later, now over a month later, we're finally making a decision. Again, I've got huge support and complete faith that the individual who represented this town in the position of mayor so well until 2010 will continue to represent in a professional manner for a year stint on the Planning Commission. And I welcome his willingness to serve his fellow citizens. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Wilson. So again, just to kind of look at the statements you made in terms of the First Amendment, no one's First Amendment rights are being limited here. Mr. Reed has the ability to say whatever he wants on social media. No one is limiting that. Obviously, when statements are made out there in public, they're going to be looked at and people are going to make judgments based on those statements. So let's just be very clear, no one's First Amendment rights are being limited. Secondly, in terms of council members having an agenda, it's up to the voters to decide whether they want that council member in or not. That's the way it works. So each council member here was elected and voted in. Whether they had an agenda when they came in, whether it was stated that they followed through, and they were elected. That's what's going on here. Randy Reed has stated his opposition to some of the annexation projects that are coming in. There are those of us on council that would prefer to have residents who have an open mind about what's going on, to ask questions and to be a part of that process. And so that's what we're going to be doing, is voting on whether Randy Reed is elected to or appointed to the Planning Commission or whether someone else is. So pretty simple gig. And any other comments from anyone? We do have a motion on the table. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Nay. I think the motion fails 3-3 with Council Member Valentine, Mayor Donahue, Mayor Pro Tem Green opposed.